Okay, something I need to really get back into here. When last we left off, we had just gotten up to through the movies, but that overlaps with a little something here because the movies are going great, and so 1986 goes around. The 20th anniversary of the show is coming up, and one consistent thing, all the writers are going into Paramount. Where when are you doing another Star Trek TV show? Even back then, it was not. No, this is a TV property. It works property on TV. Movies are fine. We want a TV show. And again, this just because Phase 2 fizzled out, there's other stuff. And so finally, they figured, okay, enough time's gone by. That's right. We're gonna do a new Star Trek TV show. But we do need to get Gene Roddenberry's blessing on this. They knew that much, even though it's like having him on as executive consultant, even though they barely listened to him. They did have to give the movies a sense of legitimacy. They had to have his name in there somewhere, even if he was actively sabotaging them at times. He leaked scripts because he didn't like the idea of killing Spock. He leaked the script out. That sort of thing. So, and, the scripts are all numbered. So yeah, who number had that number script? That was Roddenberry. Yeah. But they knew they needed him on board in some capacity. So they're telling, okay, this is what we have in mind for a new Star Trek show. And the idea they had in mind was, new Enterprise, for they get sell new toys, but also they're going to have cadets running the thing, going out there, getting in trouble, causing misadventures. And Roddenberry has always been opposed to that sort of thing because he was in the military. He didn't go to the academy, but he went to an OCS program, and he knows your cadets are at the academy. They're learning to become officers. You don't send cadets out. You send experienced officers to do this type of thing. That's why he's always rejected the idea of a Starfleet Academy show, because this is what they'll do. They'll do Animal House in space. And he kind of came back with their ideas about, well, no, God, no, please. I could do better than that right now. And he was retired pretty much at that point. He had settled into doing conventions and trying to his hand at writing other stuff. Because he said in an interview with Starlight, he didn't want Star Trek written on his tombstone. Okay. But as a major point, they kept at it. Okay, well, fine, it's my baby. I'm stuck with this. I might as well do something with it. But he had the mistake of saying, I could do better than you now. Better than that right now. And I said, would you? I was like, oops. He let his mouth, write a check that his ass had to catch. So, hash. So okay, fine. You got me. And he didn't want to do it again. Because, again, after the interview, he lost his family because of the first one. He couldn't control himself. He got dallying in with Majel and Nichelle and God knows who else. Even going back to the lieutenant, he was fooling around with Majel. But by the end of the show, his marriage with Eileen had been gone. And Majel already talking marriage at that point, by the time the third season rolled around. And I'm not going through that again, but it's like, but okay, what we're going to do first run syndication. There won't be a network telling you what to do. You will be in charge. You will do it the way you want. Again, you're a big boy. You've been around long enough. We're going to trust you not to, put go-go dances on the bridge. But, that sort of thing. But, okay, fine. And again, first run syndication was not a new thing. It had mainly been done with game shows on primetime slots. Afternoon when the network's doing their thing. Nighttime version of Match Game PM they call it. They had the nighttime version of Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. That sort of thing. That's what I started. Those were daytime game shows originally. They didn't start prime. They were during the day. While other teams were running soap opera, then somebody was running game shows. But there had been some first-run syndication dramas. Some, not many. And they generally went to independent stations like Gentle Ben and stuff like that. Although even then, it's very little first-run drama. Mostly it was just sitcoms and talk shows. But they're okay. No, we're feeling a little better, because Star Trek's done bet in syndication, where the stations can put it where they want it. They can target their audience, and they'll go that route. And with that, okay, Roddenberry came back and he started putting together as much of the old band as he could. And again, a lot of it. Let's clear the deck a little. He had to rely on a lot of people, but also by this point, the myth of the Great Bird of the Galaxy had taken full form by this point. So he was claiming a lot of credit that really wasn't due him. Now, whether this was just shorthand, saying we did this and this, because he did have to sign off on everything, but he didn't come up with a lot of it. A lot of it was, by Gene Coon and Matt Jeffries and others. But it's like, now you're having to deal with this, because you tell the story enough times, you start to believe it. You kind of forget the details yourself. So he came in and he's kind of buying the myth himself that he's created of being the Great Bird of the Galaxy and the creator of all things Star Trek. So we're bringing back Bob Justman and Dorothy Fontaine and David Gerrold, and Eddie Milkus was in there for a while. And this is not quite the same guy they dealt with 20 years earlier. And also his own health was starting to fade, because by this point he was starting to develop a little something called hydroencephalus, water on the brain, where basically you get fluid buildup inside the brain, and it's like, it does tend to affect things. He'd have good days, and other days it's like, not so great. He's a little off there. Also, complicating the matter is, while his lawyer, Leonard Mazos, he'd been around back in the original series days, he wasn't that much of a presence. Now he inserted himself right in there. He was there during casting meetings and other things, and he had no business being there. He would write notes on scripts, claiming it was from Roddenberry. Difference is, it's going through Dorothy Fontana. She used to be a secretary. She knows damn well Gene's handwriting, knew it wasn't him. And he was offering story notes and eventually landed him in a arbitration grievance with the Writers Guild and had him banned from the lot. It got that point. It was like in the documentary Chaos on the Bridge. Shatner's been really documentary. Talking to David Gerrold. And one point, so Mazos, and they're on like third floor of the building, and there's Mazos, and up against the window at the end of the hallway. And remember, one of the things writers do to kind of amuse themselves and keep them going totally nuts is imagine ways of killing their enemies in ways that they can get away with. They're imagining these things, using the story and stuff. Like Harlan Ellison, we used to name villains in his stories over the guys who picked on him as a kid. So he's seeing Mazos at the end of the hallway, and just the window there, and knowing there's nothing between them and the ground but like maybe a hedgerow, and like I could charge and throw them out there, and they'd give me a medal. Because everyone hated him by this point. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. We're not a good environment, because they're going thing, and you're going. But he's nailing that. Okay, you want to do this thing right. You got to, separate. You put about, sort of 78 years since Kirk and Spring all wrapped up. That gives the movies some time to wrap up whatever they're doing, because they're by 80, 85, 86. We're talking Star Trek 3, 4, not Star Trek 4. So I figure but then by this point the cast they knew the original cast is too expensive and too old. Insurance isn't going to cover them. They're not going to pay that much just for the cast. So there's got to be a new show regardless, or a new cast. So that and Roddenberry wasn't much for it's not. Let's go forward. Let's keep going forward. So, this whole thing, what Star Trek is about, going forward, going out and seeing what's going on. So set it not quite 100 years, but close enough. About 78 years after whenever Kirk and Spock are finished up. So we're talking 24th century. Technology is like it's well beyond the 23rd century, but not so nuts. I think and his idea with the design of the Enterprise D, he called it technology unchained. Where it's like it doesn't just have to be just form function. Like we can make the ship look look like a piece of sculpture, and that's where you get the big swooping things and the big, So. And again, a lot of this, I don't know how much of that, but again, in writing the Bible, the show's Bible, the writer's guide, David Gerrold did a lot of that. Now, granted, a lot of things were also cut and pasted from the original Bible. Some things are consistent, but the character descriptions. Jean-Luc Picard, I think, started as Julien Picard. I think maybe because the name Jean-Luc Picard, that was actually one of Cousteau's associates, was named Jean-Luc Picard. I think there was 2 seasons of the name of. But either way, it was based on, the name was pulled from somewhere. Riker, that went through a few, mainly changing in spelling, whether to spell it with a Y or an I. And again, a lot reusing previous concepts, the whole Riker, Deanna dynamic that was lifted from Decker and Ilea. And of course, they had to, with regards to Deanna, they had to bat back a few ideas. He wanted to have 3 boobs, 3 or 4 boobs. And Dorothy Fontana was like, well, how are you going to line them up, Gene? All in a row, stack. When you make it clear that this is stupid, he backed off rather quickly. That's the thing. Roddenberry he would do a lot of stuff, just kind of thinking out loud. What if we do this? Then how serious it was at that point, who knows? Let's see. Tasha Yar started off as Maja Hernandez, a deliberate ripoff of Vasquez from Aliens. When you saw that, yeah, I'd like that kind of. She's the one I could have fun with. That's good. And that's why originally the casting was Denise Crosby was going to play Deanna, and Marina Sirtis is bringing to play Hernandez. But they would like him, but not necessarily in those roles. And in typical case of Roddenberry, let's shuffle things. Let's make Sirtis the counselor, and Crosby can be the security chief. We'll change the name, make a Russian name, Tasha Yar. That's a good name, and the answer, make from Planet Beta, what? The Betazoid, that doesn't sound like Bug-Eyed Monster, no. And let's see, Geordie LaForge. That was a little honor to a real life fan, Georges LaForge, the kid in an iron lung. Hardcore fanboy though, and the Star Trek kind of kept him going for. I think his story is written up. I think in Star Trek Lives. About they would set up a TV so he could watch it in the mirror over his head. And let's see, but they didn't have a chief. They didn't feel the need for a chief engineer to be a main character. He'd show up, and let's see, Wesley. That was a self-insert for Roddenberry as a kid. I think to try and mask it a bit. Originally, it was Leslie, a girl. But I think they figured that's a little creepy, Gene. Well, back and forth. Then Wesley, that was Gene Roddenberry's middle name. Was Eugene Wesley Roddenberry. So that's in there. Bob Justman had to argue for the inclusion of Worf as a regular character. Because one of the things Roddenberry went is no direct connection to the original series. We're going to try and stamp this up and make it stand on its own. So no relying on bringing up old, no Vulcans, no Romulan, and he did not want a Klingon in there. But again, Justman kind of fought for that. No. This is the statement you're making is we're now friends. Back in Errand of Mercy. I was like, one day the Earth and the Klingons will be fast friends. Never. It's this is the fulfillment of that. And on that one, okay, fine, you can have your Klingon. And then of course we bring in Worf. The casting of that was because Michael Dorn was a fan. He had his own idea of what a Klingon, So he went in. He was very gruff, very guys he knew were there, and they were, hey, how's it going? Just sort of growled at him to get into the character. So he went in, so he blew him away on that one. And let's see, Data. Originally, the writer's guide said it was going to be pronounced Data. But I think that was one of those cases of, especially once you got Patrick Stewart in there. No, Data. So, okay, fine. It sounds more like a name anyway than Data. And they actually made a poke on that in when Dr. Pulaski, Data. No, my name is Data. What was the difference? One is my name, one is not. And of course, Beverly Crusher. Well, it's like got a female doctor in there, and I think it's kind of pulling on more of the, again, putting a female, it's a more of a nurturing character, someone a little a little more appealing than a gruff old country doctor like McCoy. And I think that pretty much covers the main cast there and the cast of characters. And again, when trying to cast the captain, they talked. William Campbell was up for at one point. A few guys they were looking for because Roddenberry had in mind he had more of a hairy Frenchman in mind. What he did not have in his mind was a bald Englishman, but that was another Bob Justman one where because Justman saw him at a lecture talking about Shakespeare or something or Dickens, and was just taken away by the voice. Said that yes, this would be a good guy. And the case of he's actually Patrick Stewart was 45 when he was cast, whereas Picard was 55. He was in the mid 50s, so he was playing about 10 years younger. But the bald head sold it that he was that age. And that little thing because it took quite a selling point, and they brought him in, and Stewart wasn't a fan. Like he maybe aware of it because it was in pop culture, but again, Britain, Star Trek's not that big a presence. And he had to be told, when he signed on finally, it was like, you realize you kind of, signed on to an American folklore. But the whole thing about whether, should he wear a hairpiece or not, and they sent back to London for his personal hairpiece. And it showed up, and it wasn't in great shape. Kind of a rat's nest type of thing. Came in with it on, it's like, okay, lose it, we'll go bald. It's imposing enough, and a little easier to sell that he's older. But again, Roddenberry being the good think on his feet solution to a production issue or a question. Because one report said, wouldn't they have cured baldness by the 24th century? Roddenberry's answer was perfect. By the 24th century, nobody will care. And that sums it up. Okay, perfect. I think Roddenberry's big skill really was in producing and in solving these kind of problems that come up in such a way that works. And he was, as a writer, he won a Writers Guild Award for one of his Have Gun Will Travel scripts. But he was kind of hit or miss. A large part with like Justman says, like you could tell how far down in the bourbon bottle he'd gotten by how weird the script was getting. First act, teaser and first act, brilliant, best thing you ever saw in your life. Act 2, Act 3, it's like okay, still there, but by the time Act 4, it's like, what the fuck am I reading here? I think you could probably sum up the Omega Glory as a good example of that. You got a perfect little mystery here. What has happened to this ship? My God, everything. All we got is crystallized thing, and you get down and this thing about the Captain Tracy standing up against all these people and trying to stand. And by the end, it's like, what? He's reading the Constitution. What the hell happened here? It's just that sort of thing. That's where. I mean, yeah, they wouldn't go to press with that. Like, you got to fix this fourth act. Shore it back up and get something workable. But again, the production, the Chaos on the Bridge is a great resource for watch what the hell happened on this show behind the scenes. It wasn't all fun and games. The cast, they're still getting along great. They're all best friends. Get together for dinners. Kind of, soldiers in arms type of thing, because they were. The conditions they were in, like their little I suspect the trailers they were put in as their dressing rooms were probably the same ones they used back in the original series. Little rinky-dink, ratted out, trailers out back. And they were not the greatest conditions. And again, they probably would date back, probably even before the original series. As soon as they could get them, we don't have to build dressing rooms, just line them up back there and we're done. But also, one of the things that recurred is of course, the cast had all been, they've been around TV. They knew you're doing a long hard suit. You gotta pick your chances to goof off once in a while. Yep. Now Patrick Stewart coming in, the Royal Shakespeare Company, very dedicated, very serious. Anyway, we are here to work, not play around. And it's like, and they continue saying, Patrick, lighten up, okay? It's we're not playing for the Queen, okay? A large part of that was just Patrick Stewart was scared to death he was going to get fired and sent back to England any moment because he was going to make sure that he worked. Eventually he got into the hang of it, and he got just as goofy as everybody else. Like, if you've ever seen the video of, it was a screwy little thing, Patrick Stewart singing a kind of a birthday song to Roddenberry, dancing and prancing around, and concludes with a straw hat and cane, and it just sort of plopped back in the thing, hat on the thing, engage, and they take that, fling it. It's on YouTube, find it, I should track it down. It's a sort of the stage, Patrick Stewart, the Royal Shakespeare, and just goofing around like a weird, when they're filming, I'm going to jump ahead here. All Good Things, or just generally, when things are getting crazy, like John or Frank said, again, you've got daffier and daffier thing. It's like someone reporting, shields down 10%. Oh my God, we're going to die! And leap into Jonathan Frakes' arms. It's like during filming All Good Things, it's like one, he just leaps up over the big wooden horseshoe in the back of the bridge and is wrestling around on the ground with Michael Dorn. It's like it got crazy. Now, as for why there's only one blooper reel that's gotten out, really, of the Next Generation, because they try to continue the tradition. Berman really didn't go for that. They got one out, but that was it. And it's like, yeah, all right. Wasn't quite the same. But I think a lot of them say, no, we're not doing any more of these here, okay? And if we do, it's staying strictly internal and not going out. Because one of them is it included, as they're introducing the cast in the blooper, one of them is shots from a movie when Marina Sirtis where she's topless. It's like, Gene, this goes out, when these things go out, they go out in front of kids too, right? Knock it off. We're not doing it anymore. But, okay, Next Gen comes out and is running. And it's pulling in this, just as good of numbers as the original series. Because most of it, the stations who are already carrying the original series in whatever, got first dibs. And there's, okay, we've got new structure, but, the deal is for a full year. Like, you get it, there's no bailing out after 13 weeks. But it got it, and it took off. And it was the number one show first run in syndication drama for years. And when it took off, and that's when you start seeing everyone else wanting to jump on the bandwagon, though. That's when you get Babylon 5 and all these other shows that came out, that are reboot of, a restart of Kung Fu, for God's sake, with David Carradine. And God, I don't know how many different shows cropped up on Xena, Hercules, all these things. That's because Star Trek Next Generation was a big whammo hit. It's like, okay, there's a market here. Well, thing in Hollywood, no one wants to be first, but everyone wants to be second. And so we go on, and Next Gen is doing great, all right, and then say, we want a spin-off. We want to do a spin-off. And so, well, also, let's go on. By first season, and Roddenberry is showing he's not necessarily quite on his game. And he knew he wasn't, because that's why he brought in Rick Berman. He knew he wasn't going to be able to keep this up. He's starting to, he's not all there. He's not as sharp as he put up a good act, but he's not going to hold up. And so he knew he was going to have to find somebody to pick up the reins if he stumbled. And the whole thing of, okay, Rick Berman was put there by the studio to ride herd on Roddenberry. But Roddenberry said he's going to turn the tables on him. I'm going to turn him to my side. And he took him under his wing, and he made him study. Look, this is how it works. This is, and kind of mentioned it's like this thing falls apart. You got to keep it going. Don't let these idiots. You know what they're like. You were one of them up to 10 minutes ago. Don't let them do what they want to do to this show. The whole reason I came back in the first place because they were going to do this crap. And so, and to an extent, Berman held to that throughout the time of his. A little too hard sometimes. There's a point or two where he could have lightened up the reins a little bit, but he kept it. No, this is not. He said, "This is not my vision. This is Roddenberry's vision. We're going to stay true to that." But by the first season, he knew it wasn't working out too well for him. And second season, they brought in Maurice Hurley, who didn't quite buy all of it in the first, but he had a big resume, Miami Vice and all that stuff. But his idea, Roddenberry's idea, was just all wackadoo. That was his term, wackadoo. And he recently tried to bring stuff up, and apparently he's credited with introducing the Borg. And no, I don't think he ripped it off from Doctor Who. I don't think Maurice Hurley knew what Doctor Who, ever heard of Doctor Who. So, but it's not that hard an idea to come up with, with the implants and cyber, prosthetics and whatever. It's not that hard to get what happens if it goes too far. Yeah. And apparently got rid of Gates McFadden early on because she was a little too mouthy. She wanted more for Crusher, and Hurley didn't, so get rid of her. They brought in Diana Muldaur, who had enough of a production with Roddenberry. She was in the second Genesis 2 thing, Planet Earth. She got to run at that, and I think she'd also been in a couple of Star Trek episodes. I think she may have been in Lieutenant once or twice. But she was perfectly willing to work. And again, how much they respected Roddenberry, wanted to work with him, depended on how much they worked with him in the first place. Because once in a while, they're throwing a good part. Yeah, he was great. It's like, if you were there with him every day, it's like, this guy was an asshole. But yeah, she did her year, came back, and after Hurley flamed out, and he left with no hesitation, like, I'm out of here, this place is nuts. Roddenberry railed out, you don't know the difference between a deflector, screen, and a tractor. It's like, what the hell? But by season 3, brought in Michael Piller, who was Next Gen's answer to Gene Coon. He knew how to, Roddenberry, said these are the rules. So our job is to work within those rules. You didn't want the characters fighting for or being judged. It's like, we'll just do it. Okay, I can buy these guys are professionals. They should know how to work. And at that point, it's like the stories became less plot, or there was still major plots going on, but the focus became more on just the characters, how they dealt with things, and you started getting stuff. And again, Piller was the writing producer. He was the guy who get with the writers and write scripts of his own. Berman was the line producer. He would make sure everything was on thing. And finally, by season 3, Roddenberry's like, okay, I can finally kick back and relax. I got people who are running the show. They're still running stuff by him. He's still in the loop, but he's no longer having to intervene so much. He's got people who can do it for him. He can finally relax a bit. And again, also in the season 3, that's when the dialogue started to be a little smoother, a little less, hackneyed. And started playing just a little, better. And we started getting the really good stuff, And whoops. But again, you started seeing him less, because his health is also deteriorating pretty badly by this point. And again, you'd have good days, you'd have bad days. The bad days come more frequent than the good days. And eventually, and again, also during this whole time, Susan Sackett is carrying on the franchise. She'd been kind of the other woman since the 70s. Majel knew all about it, but knew she couldn't do anything about it. And she really didn't have much to gripe, because once upon a time, she was the other woman. So it's like, fighting him on the, and again, not like she hadn't carried on, she carried on herself once in a while. She stepped on him a few times. So. But when the day came, though, where Jean finally passed on to that undiscovered country from which no traveler returned, Majel made sure that Susan was out the door within 10 minutes of the news breaking. Also, Richard Arnold was out. You know, that was more Rick Berman's. Richard Arnold had been... he'd been kind of Jean's little lackey for a number of years. We can go back. I think he may have even been the guy who, at one of the charge conventions, when Jean and Majel were trying to get into a place where they're holding the discussion, and he didn't recognize. Only people connected with Star Trek can get through here. And Jean goes, "I am Star Trek," and brushes by in a big grand fashion. Everyone laughs. You know who that was? That was Gene Roddenberry. Oh, but Richard Arnold kind of managed to ingratiate himself, and then became pretty much his running boy, and eventually got into the position as the head archivist was the word with the Next Gen. And I corresponded many times with him. I still have the letters, but he was a bit of a pain in the butt with certain things. The authors and comic book writers were serious problem with Richard Arnold, the way he would do it, he's really the main source of this thing of the animated series is out because Gene didn't like it. He changed his mind after a while, which is something Gene never told Bjo Trimble or Dorothy Fontana. And Bjo's saying because he had a copy of the Concordance on his desk during Next Gen, and animated series takes up a big chunk of that, and he never sold it. If you update this thing anytime soon, don't include the animated. I don't like it anymore. No, he never said that to them. So, again, this brings a pretty well-founded speculation, and I've talked to David Jarvis, and yeah, that sounds about right. Basically, animated series was excluded from any kind of references in Next Generation for legal reasons. Because it's kind of what they're facing right now with Secret Hideout and the current stuff. Filmation actually did the production of the animated series. Paramount Television just distributed it. So, the way the rules are certainly back then, if they made any reference to anything that was exclusively the animated series, Filmation would have to get a cut. They'd have to run it by them, and they'd have to pay them to use it. And Paramount has never been in the habit of paying money they don't want to have to pay. Especially not since Gulf Western took over. It's like, no. Because that was part of the thing of gutting the budget with Star Trek's third season. Because they didn't see any point in doing it. They already got the syndication deal. They don't want to spend any more money than they had to. No. They cheaped the show out and it showed. But for legal reasons, the animated series was set aside. Only those stuff that was also from... They can trace back to the original stuff, like Captain April being first Captain of the Enterprise. That was from the format. That's where it got pulled from, so that was the real game. Spock's troubled childhood on Vulcan. That was referenced in Journey to Babel. That was good. Spock going back in time to save his younger self. That wasn't. Going to the negative universe and aging backward. That wasn't. That was out. That stuff like that. You couldn't mention Edoans or Cations or stuff like that. Anything that was exclusively of the animated series was off limits. And Roddenberry had a way. It's like he would tell people what he felt they needed to know and end the conversation. Really kind of conflict averse. He didn't like getting into fights. So instead of going into big details, that there is a section of Star Trek that Roddenberry had no control over, or Paramount didn't have a complete claim over, which is I don't want any more. No, it doesn't count. And from there, no, he doesn't want any more. It doesn't count. It's, hey, wait a minute, those were 4-season scripts for the most part. There's nothing wrong with that. So, but until, and again, we're going into where it starts over into Deep Space Nine. They wanted a spinoff. I'll get that. I'll do the spinoff here first, because again, Roddenberry was still around when they started developing DS9, and he was in on the talks on that. He got his 2 cents worth in. I think a lot of it, with the Bajorans and the religion. Again, Roddenberry was not a big braving atheist. He had his own ideas. He thought organized religion was dropping the ball a lot. This is a bunch of Bronze Age nonsense here, but but there's something out there that this is what these guys set up is what it, and they think what it's about. Yeah, I know. Goodness, it was not quite so there. This is what these people understood to be, but it's then that's the truth. Okay, so there's something going on there we don't understand yet. They didn't understand it then. Why should we understand it now? But there's something going on. There's something beyond what we know. And so I think a lot of that was incorporated into the Bajorans and their belief in the prophets and these are extra dimensional beings. The yada yada yada. So the whole thing, Roddenberry wouldn't have approved it. Roddenberry was in on the development of DS9, so screw you. But also around the time, that is when the legal wrangling was finally being wrapped up over the rights to the animated series. And a big thing on that one is, again, I point to the fact that when it came out on home video, it was through CBS Home Video, not under Filmation's title. Filmation was also putting out DVD sets, but it's under Filmation. You can get season sets of the shows they were doing, but Star Trek, that's CBS Home Video. That is Paramount. The only time you see the Filmation logo at all is in the episode itself. It's nowhere else on there. And that is also when you start seeing references to the animated series. Kor talking about his old ship, the Klothos. That's from Time Trap. And Garak talking about tending to Edosian orchids. Well, as posing as a gardener on Romulus. Edoans, that's what Lieutenant Eric's was. The three-on-three leg camp. That's from the animated series. So you start seeing references to the animated series throughout, and that's when now it's clear. That's when the animated series became canon again, and was now free to, and you still read that and references in Enterprise later on. And we got an issue here. Okay, I'm going to deal with that in a minute. But that is when... Anyone's still saying, that's not canon? No, it's canon. Okay, it was off the shelf for a while for legal reasons, but it's back in by the time DS9 starts referencing it. So, let's end that debate right now. But okay, so... And again, you can at the time the first reference there, that's when you say, okay, now we know it's certainly by this point. Anyway, when the thing came out, and there's a debate on the DVD set, and then the extras, is animated series canon, and they go through it all. And it's like, and David Jarrett, look, it aired on NBC. Roddenberry was the showrunner. Dorothy Fontana, approved the script. Most of the writers were original series, writers. You had almost the entire original cast in their original parts. It's canon, okay. It's like, what is the debate here? And like I said, I ran this by David Gerald, what I had heard about this being off limits for legal. He said, yeah, that sounds about right. So that's about as close to firsthand as we're going to get here. But yeah. So Next Gen is going strong here, and they bring in this, second series, and they want to go something different. And again, Roddenberry was in on it. But like Berman puts, like, if Star Trek was wagon train to the stars, knowing full well we're talking a reference to the TV show Wagon Train, then and DS9 is the rifleman in space. They got single father, his son, and out in the frontier type thing. And yeah, it's a very different thing, but it's also, one of the things teased at when the original pitch was, maybe we could come back to these planets and see how things go. Stick around on a planet for a few weeks and see what happens. There was this following through on that one. Let's not go anywhere. Let's set up shop here and actually live on this place for a while and see what happens. And you got some very detailed, storylines going there. And you're not just saying, "Well, Bedros fixed on to our next destination." No, you're staying here, and you're going to help clean it up. And so DS9 goes along and it starts chugging its way. And how DS9 started getting away with stuff also has to do with when they went on after Next Generation wrapped up. And they're off to do movies for God knows why. And now we got another show going here. And you got another one's like Berman saying, we really should let it rest here before that. No, we get another show going. Okay, fine. So they clear out a lot of the next gen sets. Keep some of the corridors though, because those corridors they were built for Phase 2, and just repurposed but so the same corridors you saw on Voyager were also the original the Enterprise and the Enterprise D, and before that they were the Ring-fed Enterprise. But then we got Voyager, and this is where this is time no training wheels. We don't have Roddenberry to throw things off the thing, which is all on our own here. And eventually they did come up with Marina Sirtis summed up well nicely. Star Trek, Lost in Space. But they're going along, but again, even I don't know. I should do a little scour. Were there any animated references in Voyager? Probably not, because I don't think there's much opportunity for one. But Voyager's going along, and this is where I think Barry Diller was back at Paramount, and he wants to follow through in his old dream of another of his own Paramount TV network. Of course, there'd be a fifth network because Fox is already up and running by now. And Voyager was going to be the flagship show. And it seemed to work at first because when Voyager premiered, it won the night. It was up against Monday Night Football on ABC. Nobody beats Monday Night Football on ABC, but Voyager did. So, there you go. And they're off and running on that one. But also the beginning of the woes, because now you are now dealing with a network again. And networks tend to meddle in things. They kind of got an vested interest. They're putting up money and they're showing on their network at the time. So. Again, this is the kind of thing, and somewhere, I'm sure Rick Berman tonight would hear, that bust of Roddenberry sitting on the desk, and if you listen carefully, he'd say, "I told you." Don't get involved with networks, because this is what happens. Because the network started making notes here and there and making life hell on the Voyager set, and they wanted this and they wanted that, and they needed to sex things up a bit. So, love or hate Jennifer Lean and Kess and all that stuff, but she was one of the casualties of network interference, because they needed to jumpstart things, and then bring in Jerry Ryan in the skin tight catsuit, and they were gonna axe Garrett Wang at the same time, but he just won when People Magazine was doing their 100 sexiest people and most beautiful people on television, and he was in there, so he got spared by People Magazine. So it turned into kind of a 1-to-1 swap. Lose one girl, get another one, and someone's pointing out that they lucked out because at least Jerry Ryan can act. So they wasn't just there for the tits and she could actually act. But they again, just with Voyager though, they went the whole thing again. The old thing with Genevieve Bujold, fine actress thing, but not the kind of person you put as a commander of a starship going into hostile territory. I think Rick Berman said it was like she was hosting a cocktail party. And not really in command of anything, she'd give it but and Kate Mulgrew's initial audition tape was like kind of half-assed. She was wearing a trench coat and just reading the lines because she was busy with other things. But they needed, when Bujold flamed out after a couple of days, like, okay, we're in trouble. And, now they had auditioned about every actress over the age of 30 with any kind of name credibility, any name recognition. Lindsay Wagner was up for it. Brenda Strong and gal that played Leah Brahms and another Captain Bent. She was up for it. Probably bring her character, but went over the damn place. And finally, and then Kate Mulgrew but they need someone quick. And Mulgrew had been enough of a professional. She'd done series work before, and hard-nosed work ethic. And so when she got her second chance, it's like this time they brought into the studio. And they showed her the bridge, and the hands went on the hip. Yep, and then said, "Yep, she's our captain." She knew how to command the room. And then of course the arrogance with the hair, because originally it was kind of a down bob cut, but studio notes again from the network. The network notes like we don't like that, so they up down, so like drove everyone nuts. They lost who knows how many days in shooting just arguing about her hair, because they shoot entire scenes with just a normal hair, and it's like no, I have to go redo it all, and eventually settled on the bun of steel. And so that took a few years to finally unravel. It's like, okay, that's enough. Kate's on there. It's like, leave me the fuck alone and let me do my job. Who cares about my hair? I'm the captain, not a fashion model. So that finally got going. And of course, apparently, the fights are constant. She's constantly fighting for, to not have Janeway sleep with Chakotay. Like, I'm sorry, Ellie. As much as you and the other shippers want Chakotay and Janeway to get together, it's like this would be a breach of protocol beyond all reasoning. Because and some of that thing dressed in the void. It's like, no, she does not have the luxury to start sleeping with one of her, especially not her first officer. She's the captain. She has to command respect to these people, especially when they're the only authority out there. She can't just transfer somebody off ship. No, they're stuck with each other. If other crewmembers kind of pair up, Harry and Tom with the Delaney sisters, that's up to them. As long as they do their jobs and they're not in the same chain of command, fine. But everyone's under the chain of command of the captain. So no, not happening. But there was constantly pushing and pulling on the thing, wanting to and again, say what you want, Kate Mulgrew, she is very protective of Janeway. She had turned down many things past and trying to bring the character back. Said that's not right, that's all right. Prodigy came along and okay, that will do. That sounds good. But also, let's be fair, Kate Mulgrew was a bit of a bitch on set. Just ask Jerry Ryan. Because poor Jerry Ryan, just getting a big time gig here, and she's thrown into the teeth of somewhat resentful Kate Mulgrew, who was the lead of the show, and she's being set aside for walking tits and ass walking. And the big blow was one time they're spending like a couple hours just trying to light Jerry Wright in that silver jumpsuit, taking up all kinds of production then, where Kate just barricades herself in her trailers. No, I'm not coming until they get this shit straightened out. This is stupid. They're holding up time for the bimbo out there. And that's also when you started seeing less and less of the silver jumpsuit, and put her in the brown one, as which also you look, it was a little less up there. It's like just a little more natural. Come on. And they were horrible. She was horrible to her. So some of the conflict between Janeway and Seven, that's not all acting. They've made peace since then, and Mulgrew has come from. Yeah, I was an asshole. Okay, I'm sorry. I should have been. Let's be professional. Supposed to know better. And they've made nice since then. So anybody ideas of why didn't Janeway show up at the end of Picard to get the promotion? Because Kate Mulgrew does have enough that she would have commanded the entire room, and nobody would have paid attention to anything else. I wanted to keep the attention on Seven and getting her moment here. So it was not any kind of resentment. It was when Kate was probably busy, and it's like, no, it would detract too much to have her there. Even having her show up on screen, like, oh, it's Janeway. It's like, and that being, and Voyager chugged on through, got its 7 seasons. DS9 got its 7 seasons. Again, why they got away with what they did on DS9? Because Berman and Piller and Jerry Taylor were too busy working on Voyager, getting that running, to really pay attention to what Ira and Ron and the rest of them were doing over on DS9. So they got away with a lot that normally would have been nuked. It's kind of like by the time it got out, it was too late for Berman to do anything. But he wasn't particularly amused by some of the stuff they pulled. But and these guys were good enough writers; they knew where to tweak the rules and get away with it and stay within. They would not break the rules of Star. They would tweak them though. They would put them to the test. That's what a lot of the war was. It's like, not trying to break, but let's see what happens if they do reach that point where war is inevitable. How do your high-minded Federation morals stand up when you got an enemy out there ready to blow your planet up? That's what And that's where you get lines like Cisco. When the Federation, their Starfleet says, we want to do this and this, and you have Cisco saying, how could they do that? Well, because they live in paradise. There on Earth, there is no crime, there is no war, there is no poverty, there's no thing. They live in paradise. It's easy to be a saint when you live in paradise. It's like, and that was going to taking the slam against this is where the nice, pretty replicators always work, and the ship's always at full warp, and shields never fail. That's the kind of world they live in. This is Deep Space Nine. We ain't got that. Okay. Sometimes the repliment's out of order. Sometimes the playlist, and you got to walk up this. You got to climb a ladder or two. This is where you still got to wake up, punch a time clock, and do work. That sort of thing. And again, where you got Dominion and Cardassian people wanted to blow you up at any moment here. It's like this, That's where, and again, that's where Section 31 comes in, because there's no way this society could live unless there is somewhere in there a highly covert bunch ready to go in and do the dirty work. Because the Starfleet and Federation we've seen set up, nobody's willing to go in there and get their hands dirty. Really. You need someone who's willing to do the wet work stuff. I mean, that's why you get, like in the Pale Moonlight. The whole reason Cisco brought in Garrick. The only reason you brought me in, because you need someone who's willing to get their hands dirty. Someone who's going to do what you cannot. You're not willing to do yourself. So don't come, barging in and accusing me of anything. We may have just saved the entire Alpha Quadrant. All it takes is one dead Romulan senator and one bruised ego of a starship captain. I think that's a bargain. And that's why that episode ranks so high in some ratings, because they're not pulling any punches. And that's why they got away with it, because this stuff it came out, and it's like, it's debatable whether Roddenberry would have approved it, but it's like the fans will love it. Okay, this is and that's why in a lot of cases DS9 was really the true successor of the original series, because they did take on some of these issues that Next Gen kind of skirted around here and there. They would take it on. DS9 did do the gay rights stuff that Next Gen kind of gave lip service to. Between the episode not Attached, that was nothing. But can't get that out of the way. But they pushed it. But they knew where to push it. That's the difference. It's the whole thing. You got to know the rules before you can break them. They knew the rules. Not only because but all of them had worked on Next Generation. Mostly under Michael Piller, so they got the rules pounded in them and say, no, this is what you do, what you can't do. This is and how you work around this and get something good out of this mess. But also because most of them were all hardcore fans in the first place. They could recite back, the original series just as much as we could. So, as opposed to the current batch, which we'll get to probably next segment. But But DS9 goes, into this whole thing. They wrap up. Voyager still got a few more years to go. And they come to a thing where, okay, finally get back home. I got problems with that latest episode. There's a few concepts on there they probably should have just junked. I think that's Luz, the Tuvok going nuts. Serves no purpose. Chakotay not making it, a lot of it's side stuff. What they should have focused on was, that transwarp hub. And how if they had, if we had just gone through and taken it out when we could have the Borg on the verge of destroying the Federation. That way you have a justifiable reason for Janeway going back and let's try this again, Because just because she didn't like how it turned out, but everyone else seems okay, that's not good enough. Have it where it's like, no, we have to now because we're not going to live another 2 years if this rate. So, okay, I got an idea, and then let the thing play out, and that transwarp goes out. Then that's it for the Borg. And again, I also would throw in a homecoming scene. We actually see when Voyager gets back and the families meet. Wouldn't even have to write a line of dialogue. Just have it all just visual. Or Tom and his dad embrace and meeting B'Elanna and the little baby. And Chakotay meeting some... but the big thing that I would have done... And it would have been possible because, if Janeway... That was her dad was dead. But her sister Phoebe was still around. And her family. And her mother, I think, was probably still around. So I'm sure they could have arranged it somehow because Katharine Hepburn was still around. Katharine Hepburn, huge inspiration to Kate Mulgrew as an actress, and plus, it would have been natural. It's like you had Katharine Hepburn, even if she was in a wheelchair, just have her there. Wouldn't have to, no dialogue, just a quick little cameo of, mom's there to meet Katharine when they get back. And that was like bingo. There's your classic ending right there. And from there, another case of, we need a new show now. And Berman's like, couldn't we just let it rest? No, we need a new show right now. Okay, so charging on to, we've done the space station thing. We did the Starship Lost thing. We need to just go back to another ship like the thing. It's like, well, how about, and again, prequels are starting to become the thing because George Lucas had done the Star Wars prequels. And grumble as much as they did very well. And they set up a lot of stuff that came later. So, well, how about if we do that? We'll do the first Starship and you go back before the Federation. And that was the selling point when they want, Scott Bakula they pitched Scott Bakula, come on, because he didn't have geek cred with the Quantum Leap and stuff. And yeah, Bakula was a little thing. I don't want to be another ship, but you'll be the first one. And it's like, okay, I'm listening. And then the whole thing of this, we're doing an Enterprise before the Federation type thing. Before, when Starfleet is just Earth. And they start setting that up, Now, originally the plan was, it was going to be a full year. They weren't going to even get out into space until the end of the first year. That I don't think would have played as well. It would have been interesting drama, but it would have been boring as hell. Because no, we want to get out there. The ship is there. It's established that, they have been out there for a while. They're not totally, this isn't Apollo, for God's sake. They've been out. To say this is the latest and greatest ship they got so far. So and they're kind of on the edge there with the Klingons, especially when they're showing. Pretty sure there's Tiny Lister, and with the full ridges and everything. Wait a minute, this wasn't. The big problem with Enterprise to most the fans though is like it didn't really because actually you didn't really violate canon in that sense, and that really there's very little at this point that was nailed down as far as what was Earth like then, what was technology like at that point. What it did was blew the hell out of all these preconceptions and stuff like Starfleet battles and stuff like that that had built up over the years over what the fleet was like and what the ships were like back then. And that pretty much told them, well, yeah, Starfleet Battles is fun, but it was never canon in the first place, guys. So don't get too wrapped up in it. So it's a lot of trying to get people to let go of their preconceptions. There's no, we're telling you how it was right now. Okay. And a lot of this was they had to figure out how to work it because originally the Vulcans were like they're jackasses. And when we're not too happy about these emotional humans getting out there and causing problems. We know what's out there. You're not ready for it. Everything kind of riding the brakes quite a bit. Well, humans don't like when they're riding. We're chomping to get out there. And also the temporal Cold War idea. That was the network. Indirectly, at least. I don't know if they did the Cold War thing directly, but they felt that a 22nd century starship going out the first time was not futuristic enough. So, okay, what do you do with that? And so they cooked up this temporal Cold War thing with the bad guys from the future are going to muck around with things, trying to get some overarching threat going. But nobody really liked the idea. Okay, so it's not like Berman and Braga thought they had come up with something. This will be. It's like we're trying to keep the network happy so we can keep a show going. So there was that. But it gone, and for the most part, they're still trying to set things up. But a lot of it, the show has gotten kind of a bad rap, because again, the people saying that's not the way it's supposed to be. Well, you don't know. We haven't really seen this area before, and they did try to hold as much as they could to canon as much. It was like when Ron Moore was talking about when the show was coming. I said they'll have to become real true believers in the original show and the timeline, because there'll be plenty of guys like me ready to jump down their throats the second they step out of line. So you better be hardcore believers in this, kids, if you're going to go forward with this. And again, I'll give them credit. They tried. They tried as much as they could to try and keep it while still trying to do something new. And again, I think the technology was such that, okay, they're finding a fine line there. How do we make it look more advanced without leapfrogging past the original series? They've been pretty well established by with Trials and Tribulations and no, that was how it looked. They were not gonna do a visual reboot thing of this is our no. That's how it looked. Those were the sets. That was the costumes. That's it. So they brought a lot from submarines and ships. Nowadays, let's carry this forward a little bit and put them in kind of like NASA jumpsuits. Give them pockets for the first time ever. And again, they tried to walk the line as much as they could. And they've muddled around a bit there when the third season. I'll admit I boycotted that one because the whole Xindi war. No, God, no, they would not. You cannot just insert a war again. The sort of thing without any kind of this would carry over. Okay, then what? Now as it again it retroactively. I did go back and watch it later. And the way it played out, it had the potential to be, but it was a very short-lived thing. So it's this I could buy it now, as it wasn't that big a deal when all was said and done. It was like one attack really and some conflict, but not necessarily something's going to be not like a World War II thing. Okay, it's more of a Whiskey Rebellion type of level thing. So if you really look, there it is, but it's not that big a whoop when all is said and done. Now, as for when at the end of season 3 though, and now we're into season 4. And that's where they bring in Manny Coto and the other guys, because they're Berman and Braga are getting burned out. Okay, they've been doing this since Next Generation. and Burma got shepherding DS9 and Voyager and you said, please somebody rescue. They bring in new. Okay, no, we need now. It's time to finally fully embrace. We are a prequel to the original series. Start building some bridges here, and that's where you start seeing more tie-ins here. Okay, this is how this got started. This is the guy who invented the transporter. This is the other thing, And when you finally get Inner Mirror Darkly, it's like to explain. Okay, this is how and how the Mirror Universe got the Constitution class starship. Well, yeah, here it was. It didn't just happen to develop it. They actually got one. They got the Defiant. Whatever happened to the Defiant? Well, this is what happened. And finally explain. Okay, it's time to tackle the Klingons. Okay, time to go ahead and nail down why the Klingons lost the ridges. Okay, and while we're at it, we can play around with the eugenics wars. Someone decided to dig that up. And why not make it soon? Okay, we like Brent. We're giving more work to do. It wasn't always in robotics. Some of it was genetic engineering. And so, they played that one. And also corrected a bit of a goof on Ron Moore's part in the DS9 episode, Dr. Bashir, I presume. And the reference they make to the eugenics wars as happening 200 years ago. It's like that was an admitted goof by Ron Moore. Because when he was writing the thing, he had Khan's line from Wrath of Khan, 200 years ago, I was a prince, and I forgot there's 100 years since then. Okay, so I needed to add a little bit there. So that was an admitted screw up on his part. And this brings in the thing. It's like not every word that comes out of these characters' mouths is necessarily the gospel truth. These characters can misspeak as easily as we can. So it's like, if you got something that is technically really a production goof, don't take that as chisel in stone. Okay, it's a fuck up. Okay, yeah, we got the record to say one line does not necessarily wipe out the entire thing. It's kind of your mileage may vary. Choose wisely. But the augment arc in Enterprise settled by no, it was the 1990s. It was late 20th century. We're putting that back. We're nailing it down for sure. And again, I would do it. Also, we're addressing why the Klingons look like regular human beings. They're a little weaker, and they lost the ridges, but they're nastier too. A little more conniving here, and also make it mutate into a virus that's spreading throughout. Throughout. So all the a lot of the Klingons started looking like offshoots of Ming the Merciless. And I was like, well, they could have a lucrative practice doing, ridge implants. But that took care. Okay, now we have a reason. We can move on. Man, I like it when they go back and fix these things. Resolve parent conflicts. No, it's not necessarily conflicts. Let's put a story around it. But as for why Enterprise did not make it, has nothing to do with things falling apart in the story. The ratings were still middling okay. They're all right. It was less Moonves. Because by this point, more merger shenanigans going on at Viacom, and Moonves was now in charge. The UPN was about to merge with the WB, become the CW. And part of wrapping that up is Moonves finally got in charge of overseeing the whole thing. Moonves hates science fiction. He particularly hates Star Trek. God knows why. I mean, he's been hailed as a genius in programming because their Friends was one of his ideas and other things. But some kind of bug up his ass about sci-fi stuff and not really knowing it because somebody got ripped into go and see, one of the Star Wars films, or one of the prequels, I think, at point. Maybe Force Awakens. But he's going, don't we own that? Shouldn't we be getting paid for that? No, that's Star Wars. That's we own Star Trek. Didn't know the difference. But he wanted to pull the plug after season 3. But Carrie McCluggage, who's always charging UPN, give us one more year to wrap things up here if you can do that. Let not just end on a freaking cliffhanger with a couple of Messerschmitts firing at, or no, a couple of Mustangs, P-51 Mustangs firing at the shuttle pod. And that's also part of the reasons why season 4 was so heavy with the tiebacks to the original series. We only got 1 year to wrap this up. We better start hustling. So they went at it. They got it. And got to really talk about these are the voyages. Their heart was in the right place, but the execution is like, no. Nobody liked that one. Nobody involved liked it. It was supposed to be a Valentine to the entire franchise. It just turned into one more episode of The Next Generation, and not really a great one either. Because even that, like trying to shoehorn this into the storyline of the Pegasus, where there's an episode we saw. That's the thing. We saw this episode, and we know the flow of it, and there's no way in hell Riker has time to go down to the holodeck and play around with holodeck versions of Archer and his crew. It's like, on that score, I was like, make it a different timeline. Okay, one, taking into account it's been a lot of years since, Frakes could pass for that time. Marina Sirtis, no. The years have not really been, I won't say kind, but they have not gone unnoticed, okay? So I think what they should have done, and they'd already done, I think, First Contact by then, or whatever, the movies by then. Far enough along that Riker was due to slide to the command of the Titan. They should have focused on that, with him agonizing whether to actually take the center seat this time. Center story, and then instead of, how do I do it? No, we saw that process. That doesn't fit, okay? But you do something we haven't seen before, where Riker's being offered command of the Titan and doing the wrestling match with that one. That would work. And that would have been no problem at all. Even with all the crap they did with the holodeck. Because there's even a reference by by Deanna about whether or not this was a properly written holodeck program. So there's your wiggle room right there. That don't take what you're seeing on screen as gospel. None of it is, all of it's on the holodeck, so all of it could be very wrong. But again, they tried to be a Valentine to the franchise, and it turned into a fuck you to the franchise. It just turned into a holodeck episode of Next Generation, not well done. The Enterprise crew, they don't even their really good finale was the previous episode. Okay, that's where really should think of as that's where Enterprise wrapped up. The other one was a one-off crap. And again, around this time, you're still doing movies. I mean, Star Trek 6 was the 25th. That coincided with things. That's why you got Michael Dorn in there as as Worf's grandfather, Colonel Worf. Mainly, again, it was kind of like Dennis Miller's in a Weekend Update sometime earlier about all the movies coming up and everything's a sequel. Like upcoming movies like Friday the 13th, 6th, and then wrap it. And Star Trek 5, The Apology. So again, at this point, original series, original cast up or what. Next Generation films are starting to wrap up. It was sometime a little bit after this that. Insurrection. No, Insurrection would do okay. Nemesis. This is around that time when Nemesis came out, and it got torpedoed, really. Because this is around the time people were not happy what was going on with Enterprise. And the impression was certainly given that the producers didn't give a shit. This is around, second or third season, when it's like they're doing stuff, and it's like we're screaming, it's like, what are you doing? This is crap. And one of the writers, like they're, like the fans are just like bugs on the windshield of Voyager. Oh, really? We're bugs on the windshield of Voyager? hold our records, you know. Nemesis comes out, and other movies are changing their release dates so they don't get stomped by this new Star Trek film coming. Because even Star Trek V won the weekend. It was number one when it came out in that weekend. But they're moving their dates. So what happens when Nemesis comes out? It loses out to a Jennifer Lopez rom-com, Made in Manhattan. This was a serious whack upside the head to Paramount. It's like, you piss off the fans enough, guess what? We won't come out to see your movie. That's a little miss. This was not, because no one knew it was a crappy movie when it came out. And there was bad buzz about it, because the director's calling LeVar Burton an alien, and so the stuff was already coming. It was starting to leak out that this is not going to be good. But that still should not have translated into less than 20 million opening weekend. It, like the general phrase, it didn't even open. It just flopped there. So, I mean, the only movie that dared to open up again was a movie they figured we're not going to have any crossover, so we're fine. It's just a J-Lo rom-com. Who cares? It won the weekend, and those who did go out and see Nemesis don't bother. Word of mouth said, none of he's like, don't even bother coming. Because, again, Galaxy Quest didn't do great when it opened either, but it got good word of mouth and it became a hit. Nemesis was not good. Therefore, it died on the opening weekend and it just stayed there. And that's why do not discount audience reaction to, something else. Because this was the only way really to show our displeasure of what was going on with Star Trek on TV was, okay, we're going to take out your movie. Because the whole thing is, they'll go see anything. No, we won't. Don't count on them being there, because you start pissing people off, then we're just not going to show up. Because remember, way back to the 70s, there was a time when there was new Star Trek. We had to make our own. And in that environment, there are all kinds of fan films and stuff. Some of them look like they did come out of official productions. One thing that kind of griped Paramount a bit. But like Star Trek Continues. I've seen a few reviews where it's like they had to people watching had to remind themselves they're not watching the actual original series. They did that good a job of matching the feel of it. That they're this is a fan film. Because a lot of proper use of the music and lighting and getting all set. When Vic put that, we'll get onto that stuff later. Another one. But when that turd burger movie came out, it's like, nope, we got it. And that's why the movie franchise laid there floundering for a number of years. Because, again, studio execs aren't necessarily, on the same page. Well, I guess we're burned out. No, we're not burned out. We're just, mad. Okay? It would not take a whole lot of research to figure out why the fans were mad and didn't come to see a movie. Guys certainly posted on it back in the day. And I wasn't the only one. The AOL message boards were a major hotbed for Star Trek discussion back in the day. One of the stupidest things AOL ever did was killing those off. But that's where we were, okay? We got a hostile exec at CBS who they pulled the plug on Enterprise before they were really done. And the movies crashed and burned with Nemesis. And then we laid fallow for a while. And with that, we will pick it up later discussing JJ and the current state of affairs. And let me know in the comments whether you want to fold in the fan film stuff that grew up during this time, or just do that as a separate one. So we'll talk at you later.